I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of The School Without Walls. I am Anthony Hobbs, the host and founder of this educational program. Our purpose is to stress the importance of mentoring the African American male. However, we talk about other relevant things, but we do not want to forget the main purpose of this program is to try to save some African American male from problems. Family is very important. Today we are talking about African American history and culture. Keep in mind that prior to the 1930s, very little was said in the public school system about the African American community, and Dr. Carter G. Woodson came up with the idea of a week, national week called Black History Week. We've only progressed 3 weeks, and I want us to make more progress than that. So my theme for this year, same as last year, Black History after February. We're encouraging pastors to get involved more than you are into trying to elevate, educate the African American community. My guest today is the Reverend Tavante Calhoun Sr. He's assistant pastor of Rose Hill Missionary Baptist Church that's located on Hazel Street here in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He's also a Spanish student of mine here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. We're certainly proud to have you with us today.
Thank you, sir.
You're going to talk with us about a very popular African American.
Yes, sir.
His name is W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yes, sir.
And some would say Du Bois. That was the French name.
Yes.
Did you ever know what the W.E.B. stood for? Do you have that in your report?
His name is actually William Edward Burghardt.
You seldom hear that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, give us whatever you have. If you want to do a synopsis first, whatever you have, just talk to us about him and his early existence in the USA.
That's it. W.E.B. Du Bois, William Edward Burghardt Du Bois. He is a man who had done profound work, not just for African American community, but for civil rights activists throughout the world. Mm-hmm. He lived a dynamic life, somewhat controversial in some dynamics, but at the same token, he did a lot of work that gave opportunity and availability to people of color in his time. Mm-hmm. During the early 20th century, this was shortly after slavery, you dealt with the Jim Crow laws and the Jim Crow aspect. Mm-hmm. Well, W.E.B. Du Bois actually grew up in Massachusetts, mm-hmm. and this is where he was born. And so being born in Massachusetts, he was from a small town. He didn't actually have the experience of dealing with a lot of the Jim Crow from an overt standpoint. Mm-hmm. More things were introverted, more things were kind of hidden from him. So he had the opportunity to receive a lot of education mm-hmm. that black people in the South did not have access to. So although he knew some of the plight, he didn't have a complete understanding at the time mm-hmm. due to his education and the exposure that he had from his youth.
He hadn't had that personal contact with it, had he?
Yes, sir.
Already had. Mm-hmm.
And moving from there, when you look at his story, doing more in-depth story, you find out that he actually, from a high school student, had care and concern for his race. Mm. And even in the high school, as a high school student, he wrote for a paper out of New York, the New York Globe, if I'm not mistaken, and he wrote more about his race, giving them opportunity and exposure to have equal rights and more civil liberties. Mm-hmm. And so moving on from high school, he transitioned to going to college. He wanted to be a student of Harvard. Unfortunately, he didn't have the money to be able to go to Harvard. So he ended up attending Fisk College, Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. This was his first open door, wide open opportunity to experience Jim Crow law at its finest.
That was a national, right?
Yes.
Okay, we should have about a couple of minutes on this side of the thing. Let me ask you a few questions about, you said he was controversial. Do you have any examples of why he was controversial?
What made him controversial was just the fact that he spoke out against Jim Crow laws. He spoke out against the disadvantage that black people or people of color had going on at that particular time. But going from there, from a political aspect, he actually moved more towards communism in his later days, and actually ran for state government and national government offices as a communist in the late 60s.
I see. So we have 2 points of view. One is that he was speaking out against racism, which was unpopular at that period.
Yes, sir.
Secondly, he really did something when he ran as a communist, right?
Yes, yes,
that was
indeed.
completely against the grain of what we call a capitalistic democracy, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you also mentioned Jim Crow, and keep in mind this is an educational program,
Yes.
and we want to define Jim Crow so the young people will know what that is. What do you mean by, I believe you said he learned about Jim Crow once he went to Tennessee. What in the world is Jim Crow?
Jim Crow laws were a set of unspoken rules in some aspects, and some were specific rules that caused segregation to be a part of everyday life.
Right.
Whether it was separation of using bathroom facilities, educational facilities, even using any sort of public assets, where they were either going to a courthouse or anything of that nature. Black people had to enter into different places, into different doors, and didn't receive the same service or the same respect as others would.
Even
those
public
particular times.
education.
Yes, indeed.
Public ed-
That's
now,
it.
are you old enough to have experienced any of those Jim Crow behaviors?
Not in the sense of when the law was in place,
Right.
but just living everyday life. We've all had experience where we've dealt with
I see.
discrimination of some sort.
I see. I've spent about 50 years of my life in that,
Yes,
where
sir.
white only, black and white fountains, and so forth and so on. So
Yes,
I know
sir.
it quite well. I figured
sir.
you heard about it.
Yes, sir.
But there is still what we call, that's a remnants of it now, but
Yes.
it's more or less in disguise, isn't it?
Yes, that's
it's
it.
not played. Nobody wants to be a racist anymore.
That's it.
That's a
it.
bad word.
That's it. It's a bad word, but we still have people who still live those type of lives,
Right.
and they figured out more clever ways
To deal with it.
To deal with
Right.
those things.
Okay, we're going to stop for our break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with Reverend Tavante Calhoun talking about a very popular African American, W.E.B. Du Bois.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
I rescued Toast from a shelter in 2011. I love Toast because she's a lazy diva. Toast does whatever she wants, obviously. She's sleeping right now. She's an epic snuggler. She's so comforting. She's so loving. Toast makes me laugh. When I walked into the shelter, I knew right then that she was special.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Dr. Anthony Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program called The School Without Walls, designed to do exactly what it implies, teaching important things outside of the walls of the traditional school. My guest today is Reverend Tavante Calhoun. We are discussing W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yeah.
Would you continue telling us about this man's life? We were talking about he became communist in the USA and ran for office. How
Yes.
did he fare with that?
Didn't go over very well. he was dealing with the situation where black people were actually still not allowed to vote in a lot of areas. And even in New York City, even if they were allowed to vote, there was a lot of things that were done that caused them to deter them from voting, whether they were asked to present monies or financing to be able to vote, or just being intimidated from the ideal of being able to want to vote and scaring them away using scare tactics. And so that didn't go over very well. Plus the ideal of communism was a brand new ideal to a lot of people, and they didn't have a complete understanding. So that made him come across as more of a radical. And in some instances kind of took away from the dynamic work that he had done in his life.
I see. Now, do you have any idea why he turned to communism?
The ideal of turning into communism simply came in that he saw the American democracy and how, although democracy in its true essence is for everyone, he saw the life that he lived in America was not a life that was for everyone, and everyone was not truly free. Freedom was something that had to be earned, and it was something that had to be gained, and it was not given, and so therefore there was a tremendous fight. So that made him somewhat bitter towards the classic democracy that America had at that particular time.
I see, and he thought communist might have been a better way.
Yes.
I see. Now, have you done any looking into the difference in communism and capitalism?
Capitalism.
For the sake of those who are listening to children, what is communism? Communism. Government.
Communism gives us the idea that we have an opportunity, or we have the position of being able to allow the government to have more control about what's going on, and being able to allow them to dictate every single part of our lives. That's what capitalism, it gives us more freedom and more ability to be able to choose what we want to do, how we want to do it. Unfortunately, what we dealt with in American capitalism at that time is that everybody wasn't truly given an opportunity to do what they felt was best for them, or what their true calling was. And he pursued communism as an avenue for him to do that.
Right, that's an excellent explanation you made, because capitalism is wonderful if it's functioned according to its nature.
Yes.
But you can easily have a few people controlling everything if they're smarter and stronger.
Yes.
Whereas in communism, I suppose he saw that the wealth was more distributed among the total population. So, and another thing too that I'd like for the public to understand is the communists were competing with capitalism.
Yes.
And they would come into a country like the USA and get among the people and try to show them that you'll have a better, African American especially, that you'll have a better way of life if you follow us, which caused more division within the USA.
Yes.
Now this is the positive aspect of that. It caused the powers of the USA to behave in a better way once they saw that quite not only divorce, but a lot of other black people were turning toward communism, and that really helped in that sense.
Yes.
Okay, what else do you have about him?
Transitioning from just the ideal of him being in the communism aspect, just him transitioning from college, he actually studied abroad in Germany, actually wrote a letter to Luther B. Hayes himself, and was given money to study abroad. He ended up getting his PhD from Harvard University, which is what he preferred. But after receiving his PhD, he had more of a yearning and a tug at his heart, if you will, to want to do more to help people in his community and do to more help people in the society. So he went on to the University of Pennsylvania, where he actually ended up writing a documentary and writing stories about the Philadelphia Negro. This was a study that he did from a social aspect that showed how, although he wasn't letting the people in those communities get off the hook with not being able to apply themselves to the education that was available to them, he also expressed how racism had a profound role in these people living in slums, being poor, and just being beat down and torn down and not given true opportunity to be successful in America at the time.
Excellent. We have about 3 more minutes on this side. Doesn't time fly once we are in discussion?
Yes, indeed.
You mentioned Negro. Are you aware that a lot of young black people don't know who the Negroes were?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to take a little time and explain it to them. In early America, the people of Africa were called Africans.
Yes.
Okay. Then there came a period in time when they used the term Negro, and it derives from a Spanish term which means black in Spanish. Negro means black in Spanish.
Yes, sir.
The Spaniards were traders of slaves, so in many instances they sold their slaves to the English-speaking people.
Yes.
So they took on the word Negro Negro rather than negro.
Yes, sir.
And of course, that caused the African Americans to forget their origin. That was the purpose of that.
Yes.
It was not an accident. And then later on, during my generation, especially to the young people, they changed from Negro to African American.
Yes, sir.
And it was my generation that went into a laboratory and did a little study and realized that all other ethnic groups could trace themselves back to some place. Like French would go back to France.
Yes, sir.
The English could go back to English. Scottish would go back to Scotland. But when you go back to Negro, there was no place on earth called Negro.
Yes, sir.
So we said a little something is wrong with that.
Yes.
So let's go back to some land base, and it was Africa where our origin was.
Yes.
So we became African Americans. So I'm hoping the young folks are getting this and don't forget your history. And also we had colored people too.
Yes.
And are you aware of the difference in the colored people and the Negroes back in the day?
Not in that particular speaker.
I'm going to explain that. How much time? I got about a minute, Randy? Got 1 minute. Well, the colored people were of African in origin and European in origin. The colored was the offspring between mainly African American woman, and a European American male.
Okay.
And they had color, and of course they referred to them as color, and they also used that as a dividing tool.
Yes, sir.
The colored people were treated better than the Negroes.
Okay.
Most of the house servants were colored.
Yes, sir.
So they learned to read earlier, learned to the English better, and so forth. And that was a wedge. So that only changed during the civil rights struggle during my generation.
Yes.
That's why Black and Proud came out.
Yes,
you know,
indeed.
so forth and so on. So that's
Yes,
what the
indeed.
color. I could remember quite vividly. Some elder people got so angry. Don't call me black. I'm colored.
Yes, sir.
They were proud to be colored.
Yes, sir.
And some didn't understand that, but see, they were a privileged group among the Africans in this country.
Yes.
Well, we're going to stop on that. Be right back in a few minutes for the final segment.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Hey, I'm Tyler Perry. Do you know what hunger in America looks like? Well, it has many faces, and 16 million of those belong to children. Yet billions of pounds of food go to waste each year, and this is unacceptable. You can be a part of the solution. Join us in supporting the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks, which rescues our surplus foods and provides meals to many families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org today. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
The 60th Annual Rural Life Conference is scheduled for Friday, March 4th at the Isaac S. Hathaway John M. Howard Fine Arts Center on the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff campus. Registration begins at 7:30 a.m. with the opening session at 8:45. This year's conference theme is Sustainable, Healthy, and Profitable Rural Development. Sponsored by the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff School of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Human Sciences, the conference features several theme-related workshops. Pre-registration is requested of everyone, even though the conference is free to producers, homemakers, and retirees. The cost for professional and agency personnel is $50. After February 19th, late registration will cost $75. To pre-register or for more information, call 870-575-8968. That's 870-575-8968.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Dr. Anthony O'Hobbs, interviewing Reverend Tavante Calhoun, who's associate pastor at Rose Hill Missionary Baptist Church here in Pine Bluff. He is talking to us about great African American W.E.B. Du Bois. We were at Africa. He got disappointed with the USA and went to Africa, didn't he?
Yes.
Briefly, give us the closing of his life in
That's
Africa.
it. In the aspect of moving to Africa, he actually renounced his citizenship as an American in moving to Ghana, just in the aspect to where he wanted to be more closer to his original homeland and the ideas of what he had developed and actually lived his life fighting for. And so he made the efforts to disassociate himself with America. That in some aspects left him without the legacy from an American aspect that he probably really deserved for the efforts that he had made for African Americans during that particular time.
Did he marry an African woman? Anything about his marriage?
He was actually married before he left America. He had married and had several children, and they actually still continued some of the work that he had done. One of the most profound things about him, he started the Nigerian Project, and that actually led to what we now have as the NAACP. And in the midst of that, he worked for their newspaper, the Crisis newspaper in the NAACP. He used that for a platform for approximately 20 years to be able to talk about the plight of the Negro, the African Americans at that particular time, and to talk about segregation and all the issues and the struggles that they had. He was a big proponent of education being the process and the way that people needed to be able to move forward and bring about equality as well as power, having economic power as far as having political power. In essence, he ended up bumping heads with Booker T. Washington.
There you go. I was wondering if you had said yes.
And so in bumping heads with Booker T. Washington, that caused a rift in the black community, but at the same token, from a societal standpoint, that left people deciding what side they would choose was best. Booker T. Washington had a profound career of his own, being a self-taught person, but at the same token, W.E. Du Bois was well educated and received a lot of benefits from being a Northerner, from his descent. But just in the end of those things, the issues that they had at the end of the day caused a big separation between them, and so that caused a larger dissent amongst black people at that particular time.
Excellent, excellent. I've seen debates where youngsters were debating which was more popular, Booker T. Washington, or more important, something of that nature, and Du Bois. And the conclusion should be that both were.
Yes,
They just have a different mode, a different way, because Booker T. Washington, in the minds of people who thought as Du Bois, was kind of a pacifist.
Yes.
But he was smart enough to know that we needed money to educate our people, and he was able to get money from corporations and so forth by being that type of person.
Yes, sir.
And Du Bois, it's too bad they couldn't have worked together.
Yes.
Du Bois was involved in politics and economic power from a different perspective.
Yes.
And Booker T. Washington believed that if you learn to work with your hands, he knew you would have a decent living, because during that time, the European Americans did not like to work with their hands.
Yes, indeed.
And they would pay you to do carpentry work and that good old agriculture work, and nice money was in that business.
Yes, sir.
So that's where they both had some problems. We have about 5 more minutes. Anything else you want to say pertaining to history? Then I'll talk a little bit more about yourself.
That's one fine. I just want to state that in your spare time, in the opportunities you have, take the time to explore these gentlemen. Booker T. Washington, but especially at this particular point, W.E. Du Bois. He lived a dynamic life, he lived a strong life, and he fought for equality of his race, but not just his race, but for social issues as well. He's actually considered the father of social science. So that gives us an opportunity to learn that he fought for people long before it was socially accepted to be willing to fight for people, and especially for his own race. So in your time, take the time to know your history, take the time to learn about W.E.B. Du Bois.
All right, that's excellent. While you're on that stump, talk about this school. What happened? You decided to come to UAPB, and I'm sure you'd encourage others to come here.
Yes, indeed. UAPB is a wonderful college. It's a wonderful campus. We have a pedestrian campus, so you have the opportunity to be able to mingle and intermingle with other students throughout the campus as everybody is going to class. But then also you have wonderful opportunities to be able to learn. You have the nursing program who's coming back in full force, the social sciences programs. You have the arts that are here that are wonderful. Of course, we have wonderful athletic programs that are available. And now we're moving more toward the STEM aspect. So you have so many different varieties of education that you can receive here, and you can get the benefit of having a big college education in a small town setting.
That's
so
excellent.
It's a wonderful atmosphere, and you can't help but want to be a Golden Lion. So I encourage everyone to take the opportunity to pursue their education here at UAPB.
Excellent, excellent. Now, are you married?
Yes, sir.
How many children?
I have 4 children.
And to give us the wife's name.
My wife's name
your
is
children.
Tavante Calhoun, and she's, of course, my lovely wife of about 5 years now. We have our oldest son, AC. He's 21. He's actually a student, University of Fayetteville. He wanted to pursue engineering. So he's actually in his final year of engineering. So we're excited about that. We have a 14-year-old, our daughter Alexia. She just turned 14. And she's a student of Jack Roby. Then we have Taylor Calhoun. Taylor is actually a student at Southwood. She's a second grader. And Tavante Jr., he's the baby of the group. He's 5 years old, and he's in kindergarten right now.
Okay, we're going to close out. I think we have perhaps 2 minutes. Today we've talked about W.E. Du Bois, and my guest again is Reverend Tavante Calhoun, a Baptist associate minister at Rose Hill Missionary Baptist Church, student here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And again, we are emphasizing ministers to be more involved in the mentoring of young African American males, and we're trying to do whatever we can to offset them going to jail and offset them going into robbery and offset them killing themselves and us. Thank you again for listening. Randy Kelly is the manager here at the studio, and Randy, we certainly thank you for guiding us, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.